Hello, and welcome to Hammer and Vajra. This is another rant, to some degree. Today I'm going to discuss the ancestral path, spirituality, and theology, what I call Asian answers for the West. As of late, I have been exploring Japan and other parts of Asia that I have been visiting, returning back to my studies a bit. I've also been reading the Bhagavad Gita as well as the Lotus Sutra, in addition to rereading some parts of the Prose Edda. The other day, I saw a video from a Christian evangelist who was talking about why it was hard for them to reach Japanese people. Of course, they're always trying to convert everyone else and stamp out their religion, but that's just the nature of Abrahamic faith. He said it was because their culture sees Shinto as a part of what it means to be Japanese. That is spot on. And since Shinto and Buddhism are so intertwined, they end up being folkish. He didn't use the word folkish, with both to a degree. So yes, they see a combination of both. You'll see people living their life as a Shinto, but in death they're a Buddhist, or in death they do Buddhist. There'll be Shinto marriage, but Buddhist rites in death, Shinto festivals and cultures, but Buddhist meditation and understanding for reaching enlightenment. But I digress. As one who's studied Asian faiths thoroughly, I can tell you that Shinto and Buddhism are highly syncretic faiths. I know there's that syncretic word again, with a lot of Indo-European influence. These give them answers to a broader understanding of theology, but is the folkish, like ancestral worship within them, which gives them foundation. This is because their family lineage, cultural heritage, national identity, and moral understanding are worshipped and revered as something both sacred, societal, and within their blood. From their ancestors to their tradition and history, and their very existence is tied up with this spiritual and cultural identity. Their sacred texts and history, such as the Kojiki or the Nihon Shoki, with mythological, religious, and historical events, are taught alongside contemporary history and science. I mean, it's basically within all of their culture. Everything from pop culture to phrases to symbology and symbolism. Everything has a mixture of actual history and folk identity, as well as the above the mundane spiritual and religious ideas. Even when outside religions such as Buddhism were introduced, or Chinese stories such as The Journey West, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or The Water Margin are introduced, they make it their own, Japanize it, as it were, and adapt it to their own legends in a way that bolsters themselves instead of tearing their heritage down. We also see this with, early days of Christianity, even though the purpose of Christianity was less syncretic and more of to stamp out. But early Celtic and later Germanic faiths where Christianity was Germanicized to match beliefs already amongst the Germanic peoples. In general, these legends and stories, how they present a greater connection to the world, but also one's existence in a firm folk history, as well as the worship of one's ancestors, is an overall fulfilled and complete worldview. So the fulfilled and complete worldview for a proper understanding of a Japanese person, not talking about the degeneration that they've received as well as the West has recently, is one that has firm folk history and a greater connection to the world explained through their legends and stories. So they have a folk identity, but they also understand their place in the greater world. A worldview that has only ever degraded by interactions with the West, nihilistic atheism, and Abrahamic faiths. However, regarding of what those in the media want you to believe, people in Asia haven't abandoned these understandings and faiths, as it is a part of them. Something similar can be seen in India, Tibet, some parts of rural China, and to some degree, to give credit to Abrahamic regions, and in the West, Slavics and Turkics seem to have a similar outlook with a dual faith in Slavic regions, and despite Islam, a tribal genealogy understanding and connection to the divine within the Turkic context. With this, I present a core answer to what those in the West are missing. By this, I don't mean converting to Shinto, pretending to be Asian, or attacking one's own lineage and heritage to completely purge oneself of all Abrahamic ties that may ever be within your heritage. Instead, I opt for a path where we hold the stories, lineage, faiths, and ancestors of Western left, as well as the greater Western branch, sacred. This means that we understand that there's certain aspects in the Abrahamic faiths and Abrahamic concepts that are ultimately need to be subject to reverse engineering, but going back to the whole don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Understanding your own local and folk connection to your heritage, history, language, and spirituality is the way we do this in a healthy manner. That would also mean things like general festivals, symbolism, even those saints who may, in how they're preached of, be anti-folk to some manipulated degree, have symbolism and metaphors within their stories that were actually connected to your local heritage and history, and ultimately were possibly pagan in origin. So the teachings of the Celtic cycles, the Germanic or Nordic sagas, Beowulf, and approaching the Greco-Roman as a direct connection alongside contemporary histories is the way forward. Holding these tales as sacred and letting them inform your actions, accepting their wisdom. Seeing your local folk heritage as sacred, but also seeing it as a worldview that is what makes you who you are. Instead of the label of pagan or heathen, though I still will use these labels, specifically heathen recently, as well as my Vedic heathen and Vajra in my practices, you are your people. I would say using the word ethnic can work to be you are your people. Celtic ethnic faith, Germanic ethnic faith, your local land of ethnic faith. That's just a way of looking at it. For instance, so Japanese are Japanese. They don't profess to be Shinto or Buddhist, which is why some people think they're atheistic. But it's because their concept of religion and God is Abrahamic religion and Abrahamic God. So if you ask if are you religious? No, because I'm not a Christian. Do you believe in God? Well, the concept of God in the Abrahamic faith doesn't match certain greater Indo-European faiths, which Buddhism would have been born from, even if it had some reactionary concepts, or Shinto is pagan in its nature and origin, so then it's going to have an understanding of the gods, not in a way of a monotheistic God. So then they're going to say, no, I don't believe in God, because that's not God to them. So the Japanese are Japanese. They don't profess to be Shinto or Buddhist, but they didn't. And this it's because it's part of being Japanese. They didn't start this distinction really until Westerns pushed it on them with an Abrahamic delineation, since that was how they had to deal with dealt with pagans on their own. So Abrahamics, of course, always dealt with pagans with whether you're this or that. Are you this religion or that religion? Instead of pagans being usually usually a syncretic blend of their regional religion and understanding and approach to the gods and to their folk and culture. So instead with the Abrahamic things, you will see that they had to delineate whether you are this or that. Instead, you are Celtic, Germanic, Latin, Slavic, Greek, or a close blend. One can point to where I show how a foreign Indic faith of Buddhism or legends and language from China came into Japan, influencing them, and state that they are a blend. which I do state that. And this is true, but this shouldn't be used as some straw man, humanistic, progressive argument to say that we are all a blend, or we shouldn't see distinctions, or that we should all welcome in the third world. Instead, much how Japan took these influences and made it their own, China did this as well regarding some Indic faith. We should see these mergers of like tribes in Europe with commonalities, but adapt them to our own perspectives and distinct tribal and a folk worldview. For instance, stating that if you're Celtic, then you're of Celtic ethnic faith. You have these other outside influences of greater Europe that you should synthesize and blend in, but it shouldn't be a way to tear down your Celtic or Germanic, Slavic, etc. faith or identity. You can see these connections without tearing them, without becoming only the connection itself or a gray mass of no distinct diversity in the good sense of the word diversity, which I call true diversity. So Japan and China had made these their own. So be this an adaptation of other European myths and histories and how they influenced your own or cross Indo-European related practices and theology. Even when adapting foreign practices, inventions, or words or understandings, we should adjust them to be useful to us and culturally bolster our folk. So this is for Europeans. We should take these influences, be them other Europeans, the greater Indo-European, or even foreign concepts, and adjust them, tribalize them, and make them where they bolster our own folk, not tear our folk down. But we should have our own identity, folk faith, ancestral heritage, and worldview, our own Shinto, as it were. Throughout history, this is how people naturally approach the world. It wasn't until Abrahamic faith began to demonize our ancestors, their achievements, and that which wasn't biblically sourced, did we start to lose our identity, heritage, and folk connectivity. This wasn't an instant transition either. If you place over time where even in early days, paganism and pagan heroes and ancestors were still revered even in Christianity. And then much of it was absorbed in, they absorbed much of paganism. So even in Christianity, some of these folk heroes and the ancestors and the glory of certain peoples was accepted to a certain degree, and it slowly got out of that. I would say there is I think they're called the Nine Worthies, if I'm correct, and they were a chivalric concept that included pagan heroes as well as Christian and, of course, Jewish heroes from the Bible. But those pagan heroes were seen as worthy of understanding and having attributes and a part of the tradition and the folk and the ancestors. It wasn't until we all adapt a worldview such as this that we can start reverse engineering and accepting proper healthy identity. So with this, I would say it's kind of like the idea is that you are your ancestors, as many have said before, but you are that identity. That doesn't mean that you are only that and that there isn't a sense of individualism between you, your own actions, the gods, and autonomy. Of course, I think you should have a bit of autonomy and self-reliance. But it's the idea that you are not the world. You are not a citizen of the world. You're not a citizen of this one globalism concept, and no one can just appear on your doorstep and be your tribe, be your family, be your folk, and have all that history. That is not to say you should turn away everyone. It's not to say that you can't learn and have good interactions and cultural exchange with people, but that cultural exchange shouldn't be approached as a way to wash over your own culture. It should be approached as a way to synthesize it, agree that it came from or was influenced by that, but has been adapted to help your own culture and your own people. So I'm sort of a postscript here. Being folk focused and to folk religions, of like I just said, doesn't mean one has to reject all external understandings and methods. Instead, one should respect them, if not if not compatible, keep them at arm's length. Or if compatible and useful, they should adopt them in a way the respect to respect the source, but that doesn't erode the folk worldview or identity. So with that, this was just sort of a short video episode. I don't know what number it's going to be. I haven't made a video in a while, or an episode in a while, so I figured I would make this podcast episode for those of you who are subscribed, and or also for the Patreon guys to help support me. A little news, I guess I'll put out for those of you who got this far. So I have 2 books or 3 books in the works. I'm working with some Hammer and Vajra Inner Circle members to create a book. Well, one of my books is going to be sort of a framing of the Holy Grail and a self-mastery apotheosis concept for just general self-improvement, but also for monobund Koyos style sort of activity club concept, if it, as it were, not political in nature, but in more of a men's group, tribal protectors and help and accountability partners. And then the other one is going to be a devotional book and slightly historical book with some theology regarding Heracles, or Hercules, as it were, and just framing Hercules in a understanding that the importance that he meant to European and Eurasian faith and myth, and how you should bring him, be it your own cultural relevance to him, back to the forefront of religion. And then the last one is actually, of course, the Will of Gold book, which I am working through slowly. It's rather large, and I have a few of the Inner Circle members helping me with that. I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to this small podcast, and I would like to have more feedback. So if anybody has any suggestions, the things you would like me to cover, let me know. I'm very active on X, or it was Twitter, it's X, and I'm very active on Telegram. So be sure to check out both of those for the most up-to-date concepts. And then check my Patreon if you were interested. There's a lot more things coming this way. I'm going to, hopefully after writing these 3 books, I'm going to shift from writing as much articles to making more video content, in real life content, and supporting actual practices of Indo-European faith and heathenry. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.